Kitfox Games has announced a new video game and we're going to talk about it. It's called Streets of Fortuna. There's a video up on Steam right now, and here's the trailer.
How will you survive in Fortuna? Will you be a thief? A cook? A smuggler? An artisan? A trader? The city is a richly generated sandbox, each citizen living their simulated life. Use knowledge to your advantage, romantically or politically. Live your other life in Streets of Fortuna.
So before I say anything about this game, the first thing I would like to state is that this is a game that Tarn Adams and Zach Adams have been consulting on. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between consulting and developing for a second here. Consulting is somebody who is called in on occasion to help sort out problems with a project. So essentially, you're paid to appear, talk, work with a team briefly, usually for a couple of days, maybe a week at most, and give them advice on what they're doing. Not huge amounts of hours, and you're usually there to either solve an argument or help make a decision based on your own expertise. So this is a game that Kitfox is developing. Kitfox is separate from Bay 12 Games. Bay 12 Games, Zach, Tarn Adams, as well as Putnam, who's hired by Kitfox to work on behalf of Bay 12, as well as the artists and the musicians that are working on the premium versions of Dwarf Fortress, are completely separate from Kitfox Games. Kitfox Games is the publisher of Dwarf Fortress, so they work on the marketing, they provide the community interactions and the newsletters and all of that side of things, whereas Bay 12 is simply the developer of Dwarf Fortress. So let's talk a little bit more about what this game is, and then I'll kind of talk about my base level impressions of it. So obviously I haven't played this. This is just the Steam page. You can follow it or wishlist it or ignore it. Do what you will. But as they describe it, they describe this game as a city megasim. Okay, now they talk about here about how it's a massive city where you can kind of do all you want would in this kind of world. You know, you can be a thief, a blacksmith, a rebel, a priest, a smuggler, a lover, a cook, or a street rat. Very Aladdin, if you will. At least I kind of get that vibe, even though it's not that aesthetic. I still get that kind of vibe from it. You are basically thrown into a very rich city with the end goal of overthrowing the overlord who runs the city by slowly building your way up through smuggling, stealing, buying, selling, trading, and all that kind of thing. It seems interesting. I've heard for a while through the grapevine that Kitfox was working on a game that was heavily inspired by Kenshi, so I'm assuming that that's where this is coming from. A game that is inspired by the success of games like Kenshi, of which there are not many. But as they talk about in their feature set here, freeform gameplay in a dense, seamless, generated city. No job or class system, so it's just skills. And who knows how those train? I mean, here we can see a character creating something out of copper, iron, and question mark. I guess contaminants, maybe. But we don't actually know how that skill system works. So that's either very interesting and exciting or very bland and boring. And I'm not entirely sure which. It's made of, obviously, they're pitching. I don't know why this is a feature, but they're pitching it as made in consultation with the creators of Dwarf Fortress and simulated people and communities for infinite hours of megasim gameplay. That is interesting. I'm very curious to see exactly how alive this city feels when you're playing in it, but we'll get to that. And a narrow focus on escapes and heists rather than toe-to-toe combat. So it's more, I gather, more of a stealth game or like the running away part of Assassin's Creed, obviously in this top-down kind of perspective, which we'll see. And then original richly textured world and lore loosely inspired by Constantinople circa 500 AD. As they say here, but it is a world that is shaped carefully to help you discover on your own stories to tell. Go anywhere, talk to anyone, and ask them for directions, or follow them home and see how their personalities and preferences affect their lifestyle. Like, it's really curious when I'm reading about the idea of a game with this level of procedural generation. It almost reminds me of like reading the descriptions that Hello Games wrote for No Man's Sky back at the beginning, with like these very lofty goals, but like, okay, what is it gonna feel like to play it? they kind of get a little bit honest here, where they say they've built a framework on which to update regularly with even more regular communications and feedback cycles. We intend for each new update to combine with existing game features to provide exponentially more intricate, complex, and fun outcomes. The engine provides a foundation on which we can quickly and frequently add new interesting improvements in both content and systems, and we're learning from our collaborators with Dwarf Fortress and Caves of Cud about how to both deepen the gameplay systems with attention to detail, while also being able to update as frequently as humanly possible. As we get community feedback and discovery of the unique issues these kinds of games create once they're out in the wild. And they say, in short, we're looking forward to seeing how you play and what you choose to do in this truly open game world. Earlier on, they do note that they've been working on the game for 2 years now, which actually isn't a very long time, and we have no announced release date, and it's not announced to be coming to early access, which is interesting because that's what that bottom line description really sounds like to me, unless they just intend for it to be an ongoing development. There's also this quote here from Zach and Tarn, which says, "We've always wanted to see a social city simulation as rich as this. And this is much better than what anyone has yet accomplished." Now, I'm really curious to know where the simulation is. What exactly are they simulating? Are we simulating individuals' lives? Because in the trailer, like, you see, if I mute it here, you do see this very early on shot. Yeah, you can see this shot right here where they're talking about just the sandbox that they're generating here and the world that they're trying to create and what they're aiming for. It seems extraordinarily lofty because, you know, what we are seeing is these kind of like 3D houses being pushed together. So I'm assuming they're using probably template buildings with like random attachments that can be plugged into them. Like if I were to just talk about a procedural generation, like guess of how this is working, like this kind of looks like a dirt pathway here. We've got these stone pathways. We've got these archways. We've got little windows. These are probably just modular pieces that are being crammed together. So it's a very fine line between interesting environment to play games in and repetitive nonsense. So I'm really curious to see how they swing that balance. I'm also noticing that this seems very flat. So if there isn't a lot of hills or verticality, I don't know. I mean, this could be really cool. Something that really turns me off of this game, though, and I'm going to feel bad saying this, but this just looks like RuneScape to me. Like, really, the art style, especially like these things, which I think they go to steal the jewelry in this slightly earlier scene here. Let's see if I can get the UI to pop up again. Yeah, right here. Brass mirror, known value 45 mirror, metal small, owned by this person in the jeweler's stall. Apparently it does damage if you whack somebody with it, which is kind of funny to think about. But art style aside, I do think this is a really curious kind of pitch for a game. I really do, and I will say that I'm interested in it. I mean, down here beneath my screen right there, we can actually see like the little crouch run, like walk quietly, stealthily, and then walk normally, and then run sprint speed. We've got like, of course, everything that's on the belt. I guess this must be like right at the start of the game. If I jump ahead a little bit, you can see that they're like cooking food with a knife, and there's a knife in the inventory now at the bottom. But as a game that is inspired by Kenshi, and a game that Tarn and Zach are doing some consulting work on, I'm very, very interested. My concerns mostly come in the same kind of places that they would in any game like this. My concerns come in with the repetitive nature of procedurally generated games. How much variety are you actually going to have? And if you're planning on doing rapid updates, like they say, okay, well, how much are you going to have at launch? What is this going to look like at launch? They also haven't been working on this for a very long time. 2 years is a pretty short period of time, and Kitfox is a very small studio. I'm assuming they've gone with a simpler art style to allow for faster development, which is often why games like this end up going with a similar art style. They also do say down here that the first thing that they're focusing on getting working and functional is the thief gameplay. So playing as a thief. I will try this. I am interested in this. I think that if anything, the name isn't particularly memorable, or at least it hasn't been for me. And the art style, meh. It's somewhere between RuneScape and The Sims, and those are two things that don't really resonate with me. However, everything mechanically sounds really interesting. However, I think that placing stuff like this here is maybe a bit of a concern for me, because you are putting the name of Dwarf Fortress behind a project that you're working on. And even if they completely believe in the project, video games don't come together or become playable until the last possible second a lot of the time. And this is a very, very, very heavily generated game. And if we're talking about a game that's generating content for it, it could be awesome. It could be awful. And I think tagging the glowing endorsement of your own developers on it is a little bit questionable, especially considering they do say that down at the bottom, they're working with Zach and Tarn as well as their collaborators on Caves of Cud. So it's kind of like, okay, so you're publishing these two amazing examples of procedural generation and then plastering their names on it while you're making another game. I wouldn't do that personally, but let's hope that it ends up for the best. I mean, they are getting consultation from some of the best, so let's see what Kitfox can really do. That's the new game from Kitfox. Sorry, I just got back from vacation, so content's a little sparse right now, but we'll try and get things back in order over the next few days. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.